The rattlesnake's warning came too late, its coiled body already striking toward the woman's ankle as she bent to retrieve the fallen canteen from the dusty Texas ground. Wade Lancaster's boot came down hard on the serpent's head before its fangs could sink into flesh. His reflexes, honed by 15 years of riding rough country, saving her life in the space of a heartbeat. The woman stumbled backward with a sharp gasp, her dark eyes wide with shock as Wade kicked the twitching snake away into the scrub brush, his other hand instinctively reaching out to steady her by the arm. "You all right, miss?" Wade asked, his voice rougher than he intended from the adrenaline coursing through him. His hand lingered on her arm perhaps a moment longer than necessary before he pulled it back, suddenly aware of the warmth of her skin through the thin fabric of her sleeve. "I think so," she managed, her breath coming in quick bursts. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to calm herself. "Thank you. I did not see it there." Wade noticed her accent then, the slight lilt that marked her as not quite native to these parts. He took a proper look at her now that the immediate danger had passed. She was younger than he first thought, maybe 22 or 23, with rich brown hair pulled back in a practical bun that had come slightly loose from her near miss with death. Her dress was simple calico, faded from sun and washing but clean. Dust coated the hem and her worn boots. What struck him most were her eyes, deep brown and holding something he could not quite name. Fear from the snake, certainly, but something else beneath that. Something that made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with killing rattlers. "Lucky I came along when I did," Wade said, tipping his hat back slightly. "This stretch of road between Marysvale and the outlying ranches is crawling with them this time of year. August heat brings them out looking for shade and water." "I am grateful," she said, bending carefully to retrieve her canteen. Wade noticed her hands trembled slightly as she picked it up. "My wagon threw a wheel about a mile back. I was walking to town to find help." Wade glanced past her down the dusty road. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and it had to be pushing 100 degrees. No weather for a woman to be walking alone, snake or no snake. "You should not be out here by yourself. Where is your husband?" Something flickered across her face. "I have no husband. I am traveling alone." The answer surprised Wade more than he cared to admit. Women did not travel alone in Texas in 1883, not if they could help it. The country was still wild enough that it took a certain kind of desperation or determination to strike out without protection. He studied her more closely, noting the set of her jaw, the way she held herself despite the scare she had just endured. This was not some foolish girl on an adventure. This was a woman running from something or toward something with equal urgency. "Wade Lancaster," he said, extending his hand properly. "I've got a ranch about 3 miles north of Marysvale. Was heading into town for supplies when I spotted you." She hesitated only briefly before taking his hand. Her grip was firmer than he expected, her palm calloused from work. "Marlena Voss. I appreciate your help with the snake, Mr. Lancaster. If you could point me toward the nearest blacksmith or wheelwright in town, I will not take up more of your time." "Call me Wade," he said automatically. "And I cannot in good conscience point you anywhere and leave you to walk in this heat after nearly getting bit. My horse can carry us both into town. We will get your wagon seen to." Marlena looked like she wanted to argue, her chin lifting with a stubborn tilt that Wade found himself oddly drawn to. But practicality won out. She nodded once, sharply. "That is very kind of you." Wade whistled low, and his bay gelding, Thunder, came trotting over from where he had been ground tied near a scrubby mesquite tree. The horse was well trained, responsive and even tempered, which Wade appreciated given how much time they spent together. He swung up into the saddle first, then extended his arm down to Marlena. She grasped his forearm, and he pulled her up behind him with an ease born of strength. She settled onto Thunder's hindquarters, her hands hovering uncertainly before finally resting lightly on Wade's waist. Even through his shirt and vest, he could feel the tentative touch, and it sent an unexpected awareness through him that he firmly told himself to ignore. "Hold on," he said, and urged Thunder into an easy walk toward Marysvale. They rode in silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the steady clip of hooves on hard, packed dirt and the endless buzz of cicadas in the heat. Wade found himself acutely conscious of Marlena behind him, the slight weight of her hands, the way she swayed slightly with Thunder's gait. He cleared his throat. "So where are you headed, Miss Voss, if you do not mind my asking?" "Marlena is fine," she said after a pause, "and I am headed to Marysvale, actually. I have employment waiting there." "Employment?" Wade could not keep the curiosity from his voice. "Doing what, if you do not mind my asking?" "I will be working at the boarding house," Marlena said. "Mrs. Carson wrote that she needed help with cooking and cleaning. I answered her advertisement." Wade knew Mrs. Carson, a widow who ran the only proper boarding house in Marysvale. She was a decent woman, fair in her business dealings and honest. It said something good about Marlena that she had secured work there. "Mrs. Carson runs a respectable place. You will be treated well." "That is what I hoped," Marlena said quietly. Wade wanted to ask more. Where had she come from? What had driven her to answer an advertisement for work in a small Texas town most people had never heard of? But he sensed that pushing would only make her retreat, so he let the silence settle again, more comfortable this time. Marysvale appeared on the horizon after another 20 minutes of riding, shimmering in the heat haze. It was not much to look at, just a collection of wooden buildings clustered along a single main street, but it was home to about 300 souls and served the surrounding ranches as a supply point. Wade guided Thunder down the main street, past the general store, the saloon, the small church, and the doctor's office until they reached the livery stable where old Charlie Mason worked as the town's blacksmith and wheelwright. "Charlie," Wade called as they entered the dim, blessedly cooler interior of the livery. The smell of hay, horses, and iron filled the air. Charlie emerged from the back, wiping his hands on his leather apron. He was in his 60s, grizzled and bent from years of hard work, but his eyes were sharp and his skills unmatched in the county. "Wade Lancaster, what brings you by?" Wade dismounted and helped Marlena down, his hands spanning her waist briefly before she found her footing. "This is Miss Marlena Voss. Her wagon threw a wheel about a mile east of town on the ranch road. She needs help getting it fixed and brought in." Charlie nodded, assessing Marlena with a practiced eye that held no judgment, only professional interest. "I can handle that. Take my boy and a spare wheel out there, get you fixed up. Might take most of the rest of today, though." "Where is your wagon headed once it is fixed?" "The boarding house," Marlena said. "Mrs. Carson is expecting me." "Ah, you are the new girl she was talking about," Charlie said, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "She will be pleased you made it. Right then, I will get your wagon sorted. You head on over to the boarding house. It is just down the street, the 2-story place with the green shutters. Cannot miss it." "How much will the repair cost?" Marlena asked, and Wade heard the careful control in her voice, the worry beneath it. "We will settle up when the work is done," Charlie said easily. "Do not you worry about it right this moment." Marlena looked like she wanted to press the issue, but Wade touched her elbow lightly. "Charlie's word is good. Come on, I will walk you to the boarding house." They left Thunder with Charlie, who promised to give the horse water and a rub-down, and walked together down the dusty street. Wade found himself shortening his stride to match Marlena's, very aware of her beside him. The afternoon sun was brutal, and he wished he had a second hat to offer her. Her face was flushed from the heat, small beads of sweat at her temples. "You did not have to do all this," Marlena said as they walked. "I could have managed." "I know you could have," Wade said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "But there is no reason you should have to when help is available." She glanced at him sidelong, something unreadable in her expression. "In my experience, help usually comes with expectations attached." The words were matter of fact, but they carried weight. Wade felt a flash of anger on her behalf, though at whom or what he could not say. "Not my help. I helped you because it was the right thing to do, nothing more complicated than that." Marlena was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Thank you, Wade, truly." They reached the boarding house, a well-maintained two-story structure that stood out among Marysvale's more utilitarian buildings. Mrs. Carson kept it painted, the shutters straight, the porch swept. A sign hung by the door advertising rooms and meals. Wade knocked, and after a moment the door opened to reveal Mrs. Carson herself. She was a handsome woman in her 50s, with iron-gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes went from Wade to Marlena and back again, assessing in a single glance. "Wade Lancaster, good to see you," Mrs. Carson said warmly. "And you must be Miss Voss. I was beginning to worry when you had not arrived by noon." "My wagon had trouble on the road," Marlena explained. "Wade, Mr. Lancaster helped me. Charlie Mason is repairing the wheel now." Come in, Mrs. Carson said, stepping aside. "You look done in by the heat, poor dear." "Wade, thank you for seeing her safely here." Wade knew a dismissal when he heard one, even a polite one. He tipped his hat to both women. "Ladies, Miss Voss, I hope you settle in well." "Thank you again," Marlena said, meeting his eyes. For a moment, something passed between them, a spark of connection that Wade felt all the way to his bones. Then Mrs. Carson was ushering Marlena inside, and the door was closing, and Wade was standing alone on the porch in the blazing heat. He stood there longer than was probably sensible, staring at the closed door, before finally shaking himself and heading back to the livery. He had supplies to buy, a ranch to run, a life that did not include dwelling on brown-eyed women with secrets in their past and steel in their spine. But as he went about his errands, he found his thoughts drifting back to Marlena again and again. The way she had stood her ground despite her fear, the calluses on her hands that spoke of hard work, the careful way she counted out coins from her small purse when she had asked about the wagon repair, each cent clearly precious. Wade told himself he was just being neighborly when he stopped by the general store and arranged for a small basket of food to be delivered to the boarding house for Marlena. Just a few things to welcome her to town. Apples, cheese, fresh bread, some of the good coffee that had just come in. Nothing extravagant, just neighborly. The store owner, Mr. Hendricks, gave him a knowing look but said nothing, just nodded and promised the basket would be sent over within the hour. Wade paid and left quickly, heading back to Charlie's to collect Thunder and finally make his way home. The ride back to his ranch gave him time to think, which was both good and bad. Wade had been alone for a long time now, by choice and circumstance. He had inherited the ranch from his father 5 years ago when fever had taken both his parents within a week of each other. At 26 now, he had built the place up from the struggling concern his father had left into something profitable and respected. He ran 200 head of cattle, employed 3 steady hands, and kept himself busy enough that loneliness was just a dull ache rather than a sharp pain. He had told himself he did not need more than that. Romance, marriage, family, those were for other men. Men who did not carry the kind of memories Wade carried. But something about Marlena Voss had slipped past his defenses in the space of an afternoon, and Wade was not sure what to do about that. He reached the ranch as the sun was beginning to lower toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. His ranch hand, old Pete, was in the barn tending to the horses. Pete had worked for Wade's father and stayed on after the old man died, loyal as they came. How was town? Pete called as Wade unsaddled Thunder. Fine. Got the supplies ordered. They will bring them out tomorrow, Wade said, falling into the familiar routine of caring for his horse. Met someone new. Woman named Marlena Voss. She's going to be working at Mrs. Carson's place. Pete, who rarely commented on anything that was not directly ranch-related, just grunted. But there must have been something in Wade's voice because the old man gave him a sharp look. That's so. Saved her from a rattlesnake on the road, Wade continued, brushing Thunder down with steady strokes. Nearly got bit. Lucky you came along then, Pete said neutrally. Yeah, Wade agreed. Lucky. He did not mention Marlena again, and Pete did not ask, but Wade felt the weight of unspoken things hanging in the barn's dusty air. That night, Wade lay in his bed in the ranch house's single bedroom and stared at the ceiling. Moonlight filtered through the window, casting shadows across the rough-hewn beams. He kept seeing Marlena's eyes, the way they had widened when the snake struck, the way they had softened when she thanked him. He kept feeling the brief warmth of her hands on his waist during the ride, the span of her waist under his hands when he helped her down. He told himself he was being foolish. He had known her for all of a few hours. She was a stranger, a woman with her own life and her own troubles that clearly did not include him. He should put her out of his mind and focus on his work. But sleep was a long time coming, and when it finally did, he dreamed of brown eyes and rattlesnakes and danger of an entirely different kind. 3 days passed before Wade had a reason to go back into Marysvale. 3 days in which he threw himself into work with perhaps more intensity than necessary, mending fences that did not really need mending, checking on cattle that were perfectly fine, keeping his hands and body busy so his mind would not wander. It did not work. By the time Saturday rolled around and he needed to pick up the supplies from Hendricks, Wade had admitted to himself that he wanted to see Marlena again. Just to make sure she had settled in all right, he told himself. Just to be neighborly. Pete gave him another one of those looks when Wade announced he was heading to town, but said nothing. Wade made sure he cleaned up first, washing off the dust and sweat of the morning's work, putting on a clean shirt, actually running a comb through his dark hair. He caught his reflection in the small mirror above the wash basin and scowled at himself. He looked like a man getting ready to call on a woman, which was ridiculous. Except it was not ridiculous because that was exactly what he was doing, even if he had not fully admitted it to himself yet. The ride into Marysvale seemed shorter than usual, and before Wade was quite ready, he was tying Thunder outside the general store and heading inside. Hendricks greeted him with a smile and pointed to the stack of supplies waiting near the counter. Got everything you ordered, Wade. That seed you wanted came in too, so I added it to the order, Hendricks said. Oh, and that basket you sent over to the boarding house. Miss Voss came by the next day to ask who it was from. I told her, like you said, just a welcome to town. Wade felt heat creep up the back of his neck. She say anything? Just thank you, Hendricks said, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Seemed real pleased about it, though. Wade paid for his supplies and arranged for them to be delivered to the ranch later that day, then found himself standing on the boardwalk outside, looking down the street toward the boarding house. He could just head home. There was no reason to stop by. She was probably busy with her work anyway. Before he could talk himself out of it, his feet were carrying him down the street. He would just check in quickly, make sure she was settling in all right. That was all. The boarding house looked as neat as ever in the late morning sun. Wade climbed the steps to the porch, suddenly uncertain. What was he even doing? But before he could retreat, the door opened and Mrs. Carson appeared, as if she had been watching for someone. "Wade Lancaster," she said, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "What brings you by, madam?" Wade said, pulling off his hat. "I was just in town picking up supplies and thought I would check to see if Miss Voss got settled in all right after her trouble on the road." Mrs. Carson's smile widened. "That is very thoughtful of you. Marlena is out back in the garden, actually. She has been a godsend this week, I must say. The hardest worker I have seen in years. Go on around. I am sure she would be happy to see you." Wade made his way around the side of the house to the back garden, feeling oddly nervous. The garden was a good-sized plot where Mrs. Carson grew vegetables for the boarding house table, enclosed by a low fence. Marlena was there, on her knees among the rows of beans and tomatoes, pulling weeds and placing them in a basket beside her. She had traded her traveling dress for a simpler work dress, and her hair was in a thick braid down her back. Her face was focused on her task, serious and determined. Wade stood there for a moment, just watching her work, something tightening in his chest at the sight. There was grace in her movements despite the humble task, a kind of quiet strength that drew him. "Marlena," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. She looked up quickly, surprise flashing across her face before it settled into something warmer. She sat back on her heels, brushing a strand of hair from her face with the back of her wrist. "Wade, I did not expect to see you." "I was in town," he said, which was true enough. "Thought I would check to see how you are doing." "That is kind of you," she said, getting to her feet and brushing dirt from her dress. She looked healthier than she had 3 days ago, less worn, some of the tension gone from around her eyes. "I am doing well. Mrs. Carson has been wonderful and the work is good." "I am glad," Wade said. He gestured to the garden. "You have got a touch for this. Everything looks tended." "I grew up working in gardens," Marlena said, looking down at the neat rows with something like affection. "My grandmother taught me." She always said that making things grow was one of the best skills a person could have. It was the first personal thing she had volunteered about herself, and Wade filed it away carefully. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Marlena said softly, the past tense deliberate. "She passed 3 years ago." "I am sorry," Wade said, meaning it. "I lost my parents 5 years back. It is hard." Marlena met his eyes, and in that moment, Wade felt a connection snap into place between them. A shared understanding of loss, of moving forward when the people you loved were gone. It was there in the way her expression softened, in the way she nodded slowly. "It is hard," she agreed. "But we keep going." "We do," Wade said. They stood there in the garden, the late morning sun warm on their shoulders, something unspoken building in the air between them. Wade searched for something to say, some reason to prolong this moment. "I wanted to thank you again," Marlena said before he could speak. "For your help the other day and for the basket. Mr. Hendricks said it was a welcome gift, but I suspect it was from you specifically." Wade felt his ears heat. "Just wanted to make sure you had something to eat after your long journey." "It was very thoughtful," Marlena said, and there was warmth in her voice that made Wade's pulse quicken. "The coffee especially. It has been a long time since I have had coffee that good." "I am glad you enjoyed it," Wade said. Then, before he could lose his nerve, "Would you like to take a walk? There is a nice path along the creek just outside town. If you have time, I mean. I do not want to take you away from your work." Marlena hesitated, glancing back at the garden, then at the house. Wade could see her weighing her options. considerations he could not fully understand playing out behind her eyes. Finally, she nodded. "I would like that. Let me just let Mrs. Carson know." She disappeared into the house, and Wade waited, heart beating faster than it should for something as simple as a walk. She returned a few minutes later, having replaced her work dress with the calico one she had been wearing when they met, her hair still in its braid. She had a bonnet in her hand that she tied under her chin as they walked. They made their way through town, Wade nodding to the few people they passed. He could feel eyes on them, the curious looks that came with being seen together, but he found he did not mind. Let people look. The creek was about a quarter-mile outside town, a modest stream that flowed year-round thanks to springs up in the hills. Trees grew along its banks, cottonwoods and willows that provided shade and made it a favorite spot for folks seeking relief from the heat. Wade led Marlena to a path that followed the water, dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves overhead. "This is lovely," Marlena said, looking around with evident pleasure. "I did not realize there was anywhere so green near town." "Most people do not venture out this way unless they are locals," Wade said. "But it is one of my favorite spots. When I was young, I used to come here to think." "What did you think about?" Marlena asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Wade smiled slightly. "Everything. Nothing. What I wanted to do with my life. How to solve whatever problem was plaguing me at the moment. Sometimes I just came to listen to the water." They walked in comfortable silence for a bit, the sound of the creek burbling over rocks a soothing counterpoint to their footsteps. Wade found himself acutely aware of Marlena beside him, the way the light caught in her hair, the graceful way she moved. "Can I ask you something?" Wade said after a while. Marlena glanced at him. "You can ask. I may not answer, but you can ask. Fair enough. Why Marysvale?" "It is not exactly a destination most people seek out." Marlena was quiet for long enough that Wade thought she might not answer. Then she said, "I needed a fresh start, somewhere no one knew me. Mrs. Carson's advertisement was the first one that felt right, so I answered it." "Fresh start from what?" Wade asked gently. She looked away toward the creek. "From a life that was not working anymore, from expectations I could not meet and people I needed to leave behind." Wade heard what she was not saying, the pain beneath the careful words. "Someone hurt you." It was not a question. Marlena stopped walking, standing very still. For a moment, Wade thought he had pushed too far, that she would shut down or walk away. But then she turned to face him, and her eyes were filled with a complicated mix of emotions. "My father," she said quietly. "He is not a bad man, not really, but he had plans for me that I could not accept. A marriage to a man I did not love, a life I did not want. When I refused, things became difficult, so I left." Wade felt anger rise in his chest again, the same protective fury he had felt days ago. "How old are you, Marlena?" 22, she said. "Old enough to make my own choices, I thought, but my father did not see it that way." 22. Young, but not so young that she should be controlled by a father who would not listen. Wade thought of his own parents, who had always encouraged him to make his own path, and felt grateful for that gift even as he ached for what Marlena had lost in claiming her freedom. "You did the right thing," he said firmly. "Leaving, choosing your own life, that took courage." Marlena's eyes shimmered, and Wade realized with alarm that she was close to tears. "I am not sure it was courage. Sometimes I think it was just stubbornness, or fear of the alternative. Those can be the same thing," Wade said. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Her fingers were cool despite the heat, and they trembled slightly in his grasp. "You are safe here, Marlena. Whatever you left behind, it is behind you now. You get to decide what comes next." She looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face. "Why are you being so kind to me?" You do not know me. I know enough, Wade said. I know you are brave and strong. I know you work hard and you do not give up. I know that when a rattlesnake tried to bite you, you did not scream or faint. You just got up and kept going. That tells me plenty about who you are. A tear slipped down Marlena's cheek, and without thinking, Wade reached up with his free hand and gently wiped it away with his thumb. Her skin was soft and warm under his touch, and the moment felt both infinite and fleeting. I am terrified, Marlena whispered. All the time. That I made the wrong choice. That I am not strong enough to make it on my own. That my father will find me and force me to come back. You are strong enough, Wade said with absolute certainty. And you are not alone, not anymore. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning neither of them had quite voiced yet. Marlena's eyes searched his face, looking for something. Truth, maybe. Sincerity. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she squeezed his hand gently. Thank you, she said. For listening. For understanding. Anytime, Wade said, and meant it with everything in him. They resumed walking, still holding hands, and Wade felt something settle in his chest. Something that felt like rightness, like pieces falling into place. They talked more easily after that, sharing small pieces of themselves. Wade told her about the ranch, about losing his parents and learning to run things on his own. Marlena told him about her childhood in Louisiana, about her grandmother's garden and the books she had loved reading. Time slipped away unnoticed until the sun was high overhead, and Wade realized they had been walking and talking for over an hour. Reluctantly, he suggested they head back, not wanting Marlena to get in trouble with Mrs. Carson for being gone too long. As they walked back toward town, Wade found himself already thinking about when he could see her again. The realization should have scared him more than it did. Could I call on you again? He asked as they reached the edge of town. Properly, I mean, maybe take you to dinner at the restaurant or another walk. Marlena smiled and it transformed her face, chasing away the shadows that so often lingered in her eyes. I would like that very much. Sunday. Wade suggested. After church, if you are not working. Mrs. Carson gives me Sunday afternoons off, Marlena said. Sunday would be perfect. They walked the rest of the way to the boarding house in a silence that felt full rather than empty, charged with possibility. When they reached the porch, Wade reluctantly released her hand. Until Sunday, then, he said. Until Sunday, Marlena echoed. She hesitated, then stepped closer and kissed his cheek quickly, a brief press of soft lips that sent warmth flooding through him. Before he could react, she was gone, disappearing into the boarding house with a final smile over her shoulder. Wade stood there on the porch like a fool, one hand coming up to touch his cheek where she had kissed him, feeling like he was 18 again instead of 26. He grinned like an idiot all the way back to where Thunder was tied, and probably all the way home too, though he would deny it if anyone asked. Sunday could not come fast enough. The next few days dragged by with agonizing slowness. Wade threw himself into ranch work, but his mind kept drifting to Marlena. He found himself planning what he would say, where he would take her, how he could make her smile again. Pete noticed his distraction and commented on it exactly once. You are thinking awful hard about something that is not cattle, the old hand observed as they mended a section of fence on Friday morning. Wade hammered in a nail with more force than necessary. Maybe. That woman from town, Marlena, Wade said. Her name is Marlena. Pete made a thoughtful noise. Pretty name. She pretty too, Wade paused, hammer raised. Yes, but it is more than that. She is smart and strong and she has been through hard times, but she is still kind. When I am with her, I feel like something I did not know was missing just slid back into place. Pete was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Your pa, God rest him, felt that way about your mama, Told me once that meeting her was like finally being able to take a deep breath after years of shallow ones. Wade had never heard that story before. He said that, he did. Day after you were born, actually. He was so happy he could barely string 2 words together, but he managed that. Pete hammered in his own nail, then looked at Wade directly. I am saying, if this girl makes you feel like that, do not let her go. Life is too short and good women are too rare. I barely know her, Wade protested, but his heart was not in it. You know enough, Pete said, echoing Wade's own words to Marlena. Trust your gut. Wade thought about that conversation all through Friday and Saturday. He thought about it as he cleaned himself up Saturday night, washing thoroughly and trimming his beard. He thought about it as he lay in bed, unable to sleep, staring at the ceiling and counting the hours until Sunday morning. Church in Marysvale was a simple affair held in a small white building at the edge of town. The minister, Reverend Thompson, was an earnest young man who had arrived 2 years ago fresh from a seminary back east and was still trying to figure out how to connect with his rough-and-tumble congregation. Wade attended when he could, more out of habit and respect for his mother's memory than deep faith, but he made sure to arrive early on Sunday morning. He scanned the small crowd as people filed in, looking for Marlena. He spotted Mrs. Carson first, sitting in her usual pew near the front. Then Marlena appeared beside her, and Wade's breath caught. She wore a dark blue dress he had not seen before, simple but well-fitted, and her hair was pulled back in a neat style that showed off her face. She looked beautiful and proper and entirely out of his league, which did not stop his heart from beating faster at the sight of her. As if sensing his gaze, Marlena turned and found him in the crowd. Her face lit up with a smile that made the early morning wake-up and the uncomfortable starched collar entirely worth it. She gave a small wave, and Wade nodded back, unable to keep from smiling himself. The service passed in a blur. Wade stood and sat and sang the hymns automatically. His attention divided between trying to pay respectful attention and stealing glances at Marlena, a few rows ahead. Once, she glanced back at the same moment he was looking, and they shared a smile that made Reverend Thompson's words fade into meaningless sound. Finally, mercifully, the service ended. People filtered out into the bright sunlight, gathering in small groups to socialize. Wade made his way toward Marlena, intercepting her and Mrs. Carson as they exited. Mrs. Carson, Marlena, he greeted them, tipping his hat. Fine sermon today. Wade Lancaster, I am surprised you heard a word of it, Mrs. Carson said with a knowing smile. You seemed rather distracted. Before Wade could formulate a response to that, she turned to Marlena. Go on, dear. Enjoy your afternoon. Just be back before supper. Thank you, Mrs. Carson, Marlena said, her cheeks slightly pink. Wade offered Marlena his arm, and she took it, her hand fitting into the crook of his elbow as if it belonged there. They walked away from the church, nodding to various townspeople who watched with varying degrees of interest and amusement. I thought we could have dinner at the restaurant, Wade said. Then maybe another walk by the creek if you would like. That sounds perfect, Marlena said. Although you do not have to spend money on dinner, I would be just as happy with a walk. I want to take you to dinner, Wade said firmly. Let me do this. She looked up at him, something soft in her expression. All right, thank you. The restaurant, optimistically named the Marysvale Dining Room, was the town's only proper eating establishment aside from the saloon. It was run by a couple, Frank and Bella Morrison, who served decent food at fair prices. Wade and Marlena settled at a corner table, and Bella herself came over to take their order, her eyes bright with curiosity. Wade Lancaster, who is your lovely companion? Bella asked with a warm smile. This is Marlena Voss, Wade said. She is working at Mrs. Carson's boarding house. Marlena, this is Mrs. Morrison. She makes the best pie in 3 counties. 2 counties, maybe, Bella said modestly, clearly pleased. What can I get you folks? They ordered roast chicken with vegetables and coffee, and Bella bustled off, leaving them alone at their table. Sunday afternoon was not a busy time for the restaurant, so they had relative privacy. Everyone is very curious about me, Marlena observed, glancing around at the few other diners who were trying not to obviously stare. New people are always interesting in small towns, Wade said. Especially pretty single women. Give it a few weeks and they will find something else to talk about. Marlena ducked her head, but she was smiling. You keep calling me pretty. Because you are, Wade said simply. That is just an observable fact. You are not so bad yourself, Marlena said, a teasing note in her voice. Very observant of you to clean up so nice for church. Wade felt heat creep up his neck. Maybe I had extra motivation today. They talked easily over dinner, the conversation flowing naturally. Wade told her more about his ranch, the challenges of the work, the satisfaction of building something with his own hands. Marlena shared more about her past, carefully at first, then with increasing openness. She spoke of her childhood in Louisiana, her French mother who had died when she was 10, her American father who had become increasingly controlling as she grew older. He wanted to marry me off to a business associate, she explained, her voice low. A man twice my age who saw me as a pretty addition to his household, nothing more. When I said no, my father told me I was being foolish, that women do not get to choose, that I should be grateful for the match. Wade's hands tightened on his coffee cup. He was wrong, I know that, but it took me a long time to truly believe it, to believe that I deserved to choose my own life. She met his eyes. Leaving was the hardest thing I have ever done, but I would do it again. I am glad you did, Wade said quietly. Leave, I mean. Not just because it brought you here, though I will admit I am grateful for that, but because you deserve to live the life you want. What about you? Marlena asked. What do you want from life? It was a big question, but Wade found himself answering honestly. I want to build something lasting. The ranch, a home, maybe a family someday. I want to wake up every morning knowing that I am working towards something that matters. And I want to share it with someone who understands why it is important. He paused, then added softly, someone who makes me want to be better than I am. Marlena was very still, her eyes locked on his. That is a good thing to want. What do you want? Wade asked. She thought about it, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Safety, a place where I belong, work that matters. I want to know that I do not have to be afraid anymore, that I get to decide my own path. She smiled slightly. I want a garden, Wade repeated. Yes. A big one with room for vegetables and flowers. Somewhere I can make things grow and know that they are mine, that no one can take them away. She looked almost embarrassed. It is a small dream, I suppose. It is a perfect dream, Wade said, meaning it. He could picture it so clearly. Marlena in a garden, surrounded by green and growing things, her face peaceful and content. The image settled into his chest like a promise. They finished their meal and headed out to walk by the creek again. This time, Wade took her hand immediately, and Marlena laced her fingers through his without hesitation. The afternoon was warm but not oppressively hot, a breeze rustling through the cottonwood leaves overhead. Tell me about your family, Marlena said as they walked. What were your parents like? Wade thought back, summoning memories he usually kept locked away. My father was quiet, steady. The kind of man you could rely on absolutely. He taught me everything about ranching, about treating the land and the animals with respect. My mother was the opposite in some ways. Loud, lively, always singing or humming something. She kept us all laughing even when times were hard. They sound wonderful, Marlena said softly. They were. Losing them both at once that nearly broke me, Wade admitted. For a while I did not think I could keep the ranch going. Did not see the point in trying. But Pete, my ranch hand, he stuck with me, told me every day that I was stronger than I thought. Eventually I started to believe him. He sounds like a good friend. The best, Wade agreed. He has been like a father to me these past 5 years. I do not know what I would have done without him. They walked in silence for a bit, just enjoying each other's presence. Wade found himself thinking about the future in a way he had not in years, thinking about what it might be like to have Marlena in his life permanently. To come home to her each evening, to share his days with her, to build something together. It was too soon for such thoughts. He knew that. They had known each other less than 2 weeks. But there was something about Marlena that made time feel irrelevant, that made him certain in ways he could not explain. Wade, Marlena said suddenly, stopping in the path. I need to tell you something. Her tone made him nervous. All right. She looked up at him, her expression serious. I am not looking for a husband. I know that probably sounds strange, especially after I told you I ran away to avoid marriage. But I need you to understand. I left home to be free to choose my own life. I will not trade one cage for another, even a prettier one. Wade absorbed that, understanding the fear beneath her words. I hear you, and I am not trying to trap you or control you, Marlena. Whatever this is between us, it moves at the pace you are comfortable with. I just want to know you, spend time with you, see where this goes. You really mean that, she said, wonder in her voice. I really do, Wade confirmed. You have seen enough of men trying to control you for their own purposes. I am not that kind of man. My parents raised me better. Marlena stepped closer, looking up at him with those eyes that had captivated him from the first moment. The eyes he had known were dangerous because they made him feel things he had thought he was done with. What if where this goes is somewhere permanent? Would that scare you? Wade's heart kicked hard against his ribs. The only thing that scares me is the thought of you walking away. Her breath caught, and then she was rising on her toes and kissing him, not on the cheek this time but fully, her lips meeting his with a sweetness that stole his breath. Wade wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her closer, kissing her back with all the longing that had been building since he first saw her. She tasted like coffee and possibilities, and Wade felt himself falling, tumbling into something vast and terrifying and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marlena pressed her forehead to his chest. This is happening very fast, she whispered. It is, Wade agreed, his arms still around her. Is that a problem? I do not know yet, she said honestly, but I do not want to stop. Then we will not stop, Wade said. We will just keep going and see where we end up. She pulled back enough to look at him, her eyes shining. You make me believe in things I thought I had given up on. What things? Wade asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Happy endings, Marlena said simply. Wade kissed her again, softer this time, a promise rather than a question. Then I will spend every day trying to prove you right. They walked back to town eventually, hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. Wade told her about his favorite spots on the ranch, the challenges of the coming winter, his hopes for expanding the herd. Marlena talked about her work at the boarding house, the other boarders she had met, her growing friendship with Mrs. Carson. When they reached the boarding house, the sun was lowering toward the horizon, painting everything in golden light. Wade was reluctant to let her go to end this perfect afternoon. When can I see you again? He asked. I have Wednesday afternoon free, Marlena said. Mrs. Carson has someone else to help with dinner that day. Would you like to come out to the ranch? Wade offered. See where I live, meet Pete, maybe see about that garden you want. Marlena's face lit up. Really? You would let me see your ranch? Marlena, if things keep going the way I hope they will, it might be your ranch too someday, Wade said, the words out before he could second-guess them. So yes, I want you to see it. She looked stunned, then slowly smiled. Wednesday afternoon, I will be ready. Wade kissed her once more, sweet and lingering, then forced himself to step back. Until Wednesday, then. Until Wednesday, Marlena echoed. Wade walked away, resisting the urge to look back until he had reached the end of the street. When he finally did turn, Marlena was still standing on the porch watching him. She waved and he waved back, then made himself keep walking. The ride home felt both endless and instantaneous. His mind was full of Marlena, her taste, her smile, the feel of her in his arms. He was falling in love with her. No, that was not quite right. He had already fallen. Somewhere between saving her from the snake and watching her pull weeds in Mrs. Carson's garden, he had tumbled into love without even realizing it was happening. It should terrify him. He had known her less than 2 weeks. But Wade had never been one for lying to himself, and the truth was simple and undeniable. He loved Marlena Voss, and somehow, miraculously, she seemed to be falling for him too. Pete took one look at his face when he got home and just shook his head. "You have got it bad, son." "I do," Wade admitted, unsaddling Thunder with hands that were not quite steady. "I really do." "Well," Pete said, leaning against the barn door. "Are you going to do something about it?" "I am going to marry her," Wade said, the certainty of it settling into his bones. "If she will have me." "Going to ask her soon?" Pete asked, eventually. "When the time is right. I told her we would take things at her pace and I meant it. But Pete, I am going to marry that woman." The old ranch hand smiled, a rare expression on his weathered face. "Then I am happy for you, Wade. Truly." The next 3 days until Wednesday crawled by even slower than the previous wait. Wade found himself cleaning the ranch house with unusual thoroughness, making sure everything was presentable. He even picked wildflowers from the pasture and put them in a jar on the kitchen table, then felt foolish and took them out again, then put them back. "You are making me nervous," Pete observed on Tuesday evening as Wade scrubbed the kitchen floor for the second time. "It is just a visit. The girl has already agreed to come see the place." "I want everything to be perfect," Wade said, attacking a stubborn spot on the floor. "It is a working ranch, not a palace," Pete said dryly. "She knows what she is coming to see. If she is the right woman for you, she will not care if there is dust on the furniture." Wade sat back on his heels, realizing Pete was right. "When did you get so wise?" "Was always wise. You just were not listening before," Pete said. "Now stop fussing and get some sleep. You need to collect her tomorrow, and you will want to be fresh." Wade did try to sleep, but it was a long night full of tossing and turning and imagining how the next day would go. By the time the sun rose on Wednesday, he was already up and dressed, checking his appearance in the mirror for the 10th time. He rode into Marysvale mid-morning, arriving at the boarding house just as the clock in the church tower struck 11. Marlena was waiting on the porch, wearing her calico dress and a sunbonnet, a small basket over one arm. "Good morning," she said, her smile bright and genuine. "Morning," Wade replied, dismounting and tying Thunder to the post. "You look beautiful." She blushed. "You say that every time you see me." "Because it is true every time," Wade said simply. He offered his arm. "Ready to see a ranch?" "Very ready," Marlena said, taking his arm. The ride out was pleasant, Thunder moving at an easy pace with both of them in the saddle. Marlena sat in front of Wade this time, his arms around her to hold the reins, and he could not help but enjoy the closeness. She fit against him perfectly, her back warm against his chest. "Tell me about Pete," Marlena said as they rode. "You have mentioned him several times." Pete is the best man I know, Wade said honestly. He is in his 60s, been ranching his whole life. Worked for my father before me, and when my parents died, he could have gone anywhere. But he stayed, helped me learn how to run the place properly. He is like family. I am nervous to meet him, Marlena admitted. What if he does not like me? He will love you, Wade assured her. But even if he did not, which he will, that would not change how I feel about you. She relaxed back against him. How do you feel about me, Wade Lancaster? It was asked lightly, teasingly, but Wade sensed the real question beneath. He thought about lying or deflecting or making a joke, but he had never been good at anything but honesty, so he told the truth. I am falling in love with you, he said quietly, close to her ear. Have been since the moment I saw you. Maybe it is too soon to say that. Maybe I should wait and be careful and protect myself. But I do not want to. I want you to know that what I feel for you is real and serious and not going anywhere. Marlena was quiet for a long moment, and Wade's heart hammered in his chest. Had he gone too far? Scared her off. But then she reached up and placed her hand over his where he held the reins, lacing their fingers together. I am falling in love with you too, she said softly. I did not think I could. Did not think I would ever want to. But you make me feel safe in a way I have never felt before. You make me believe that love does not have to be about control or possession, that it can be about partnership and respect and choosing each other every day. Wade pressed a kiss to her temple, emotion thick in his throat. That is exactly what it can be, what it should be. They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence, both processing what had just been said, the weight and wonder of it. When the ranch came into view over a small rise, Wade felt a surge of pride. It was not much compared to some of the bigger spreads in the area, but it was his. Every fence post, every building, every head of cattle represented hard work and determination. This is it, he said as they approached the main buildings. Home. Marlena took it all in, her eyes moving from the modest ranch house to the barn to the corrals where some of the horses were kept. It is beautiful, Wade, truly. Pete emerged from the barn as they rode up, wiping his hands on his pants. His weathered face was carefully neutral as he watched Wade help Marlena down from Thunder, but his eyes were sharp, assessing. Pete, this is Marlena Voss, Wade said, leading her over. Marlena, Pete Ramsey, the best ranch hand in Texas and the man who kept this place running when I was too grief-stricken to do it myself. Pete, it is wonderful to meet you, Marlena said, extending her hand. Wade has told me so much about you. Pete shook her hand, his grip gentle. Has he now? I hope not too much. Young Wade here has a tendency to exaggerate. Only the good things, Wade said dryly. Pete studied Marlena for another moment, then his face creased into a smile. You are welcome here, Miss Voss. Any friend of Wade's is a friend of mine. Please call me Marlena, she said warmly. All right then, Marlena. Would you like some water or lemonade? Afraid I cannot offer much by way of fancy refreshments, but we have the basics. I would love some lemonade, thank you, Marlena said. Pete headed toward the house, and Wade took Marlena's hand, leading her around the property. He showed her the barn first, introducing her to Thunder's stall mates and the barn cats that kept the mouse population under control. Marlena was enchanted by everything, asking questions and genuinely interested in the answers. They walked through the cattle pens, empty at the moment since the herd was out to pasture. Wade explained how the operation worked, the seasonal rhythms of ranch life, the challenges and rewards. Marlena listened intently, occasionally stopping to look at something more closely or ask for clarification. Finally, they made their way around to the back of the house, and Wade saw what he had been hoping to show her. This is why I wanted you to come today, he said, gesturing to a plot of land behind the house. It was a good-sized area, maybe 40 by 50 feet, currently overgrown with weeds and wild grass but level and well-positioned to get plenty of sun. A creek ran along one edge, providing easy access to water. "My mother had a garden here once," Wade explained. "She grew vegetables and flowers and she loved it. After she died, I let it go. I could not bring myself to tend it without her. But lately, I have been thinking it should not stay empty." Marlena walked into the overgrown space, her expression soft. "It has good bones, good soil from what I can see, plenty of water nearby. This could be beautiful again." "I was hoping you might want to help make it that way," Wade said, "if you wanted. I know you are working at the boarding house, but on your days off you could come out here. Work on the garden, make it yours." Marlena turned to look at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Wade, I am not sure I understand what you are offering." Wade crossed to her, taking her hands. "I am offering you a place here, not just in the garden, though that too, but here on this ranch in my life. I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a couple of weeks, but I am sure about you, Marlena. More sure than I have been about anything in my life." "Are you asking me to marry you?" she whispered. "Not yet," Wade said honestly. "Because I meant what I said about going at your pace. I do not want you to feel rushed or pressured. But I am saying that when you are ready, when you feel sure, I will ask, and I hope you will say yes. In the meantime, I want you to know that you have a place here. Always. Whether we are courting or married or anything in between, you are welcome here. This can be your home if you want it to be." Tears were streaming down Marlena's face now, but she was smiling. "How are you real?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "How do you know all the right things to say?" "I am just telling you what is in my heart," Wade said, wiping her tears gently with his thumbs. "That is all." Marlena launched herself at him, throwing her arms around his neck and kissing him fiercely. Wade caught her, holding her close, kissing her back with everything in him. They stood there in the overgrown garden, holding each other, and Wade felt like everything in his life had been leading to this moment, this woman, this perfect feeling of rightness. When they finally broke apart, Marlena was still crying, but she was laughing too. "I want to say yes right now, to everything, but I am scared." "What scares you?" Wade asked gently. "That it will not last. That I will do something wrong and you will change your mind. That my father will find me and ruin this before it even really starts. That I am not good enough for this, for you, for any of it." Wade cupped her face in his hands, making sure she was looking at him. "Listen to me. You are more than good enough. You are everything. And I am not going to change my mind. Whatever comes, we will face it together, including your father if we need to. You are not alone anymore, Marlena. You have me. You have Pete. You have Mrs. Carson and everyone else in town who has already come to care about you. We are your family now." "Family," she repeated like the word was precious. "I have not had that in so long." "You have it now," Wade promised, "for as long as you want it." She kissed him again, softer this time, full of promise. "Show me the rest of the ranch," she said. "I want to see everything." They spent the rest of the afternoon wandering the property. Wade showed her his favorite spots, the places he went to think, the future plans he had for expansion. Marlena absorbed it all, offering suggestions and observations that showed how quickly she was understanding the rhythms of ranch life. Pete had prepared lunch for them, and they ate on the porch of the ranch house. Simple fare of bread and cold meat and lemonade, but it tasted perfect to Wade. Marlena charmed Pete completely, asking him about his own history and listening with genuine interest to his stories of the old days. As the afternoon wore on toward evening, Wade knew he needed to get Marlena back to town. He did not wanted to keep her here in this bubble where it was just them, and the ranch, and the future they were building. But he had promised to respect her position, her need to take things at her own pace, so he reluctantly suggested they head back. "Thank you for today," Marlena said as they rode back toward Marysvale, the setting sun painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. This was perfect. "The ranch is wonderful, and Pete is wonderful, and everything is wonderful." Wade smiled, kissing the top of her head. "I am glad you liked it. You are welcome any time, Marlena. I mean that. Pete already told me he likes you better than me," she laughed. "I doubt that, but I am glad he approves." "He more than approves. He pulled me aside while you were looking at the barn and told me if I let you get away, he would knock some sense into me himself." "Smart man," Marlena said, and Wade could hear the smile in her voice. When they reached the boarding house, the evening was settling in, stars beginning to appear overhead. Wade helped Marlena down, then walked her to the porch, reluctant to say goodbye. "When can I see you again?" he asked. "Sunday again," Marlena suggested. "After church." "I will be counting the days," Wade said, meaning it. He kissed her good night, long and sweet, pouring into it all the feelings he could not quite put into words. When they finally parted, Marlena's eyes were shining in the lamplight spilling from the boarding house windows. "Wade," she said as he turned to go, "thank you for everything, for the garden and the hope in the future, for making me believe in happy endings again." "Thank you for letting me," Wade said. "Sleep well, Marlena. You too." Wade made himself walk away, climb onto Thunder, and ride out of town. But his heart stayed behind on that porch, with the woman he loved. The pattern continued over the next weeks. They saw each other on Sundays after church and on Marlena's Wednesday afternoons off. Sometimes they went to the ranch, where Marlena began the slow process of reclaiming the garden, pulling weeds and turning soil and planning what to plant. Other times they walked by the creek or simply sat on the porch of the boarding house, talking about everything and nothing. Wade found himself learning the small details that made up Marlena Voss. How she hummed when she was concentrating on something. How she loved coffee but not tea. How she had read everything she could get her hands on as a child and missed having access to books. He brought her a novel from his mother's small collection, a worn copy of Jane Eyre, and the joy on her face made him determined to find her more. Marlena learned Wade too. His habit of waking before dawn. His love of morning coffee drunk on the porch watching the sun rise. The way he unconsciously ran his hand through his hair when he was thinking hard about something. His gentleness with animals and his fierce protectiveness of the people he loved. They were learning to be together, to build something real and lasting. But happiness, Wade knew from hard experience, was a fragile thing. And on a Tuesday morning in late September, that fragility became impossible to ignore. Wade was in town picking up supplies when he saw the stranger. The man was standing outside the boarding house, well dressed in a way that marked him as not being from around Marysvale. He was tall, maybe 40, with graying hair and a stern expression. He was knocking on the boarding house door with the insistent manner of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Something cold settled in Wade's stomach. He tied Thunder to the nearest post and strode toward the boarding house just as Mrs. Carson opened the door. "I am looking for my daughter," the man was saying, his voice sharp. "Marlena Voss. I have reason to believe she is staying here." Wade's suspicions were confirmed. This was Marlena's father. "I am sorry, sir, but I cannot give out information about my boarders," Mrs. Carson said firmly, her tone polite but unyielding. "I am her father," the man said, as if that explained everything. "She ran away from home, and I have come to bring her back where she belongs." "If someone left, that suggests they had reasons," Mrs. Carson said, her eyes cool. "Perhaps you should consider that before demanding information." The man's face reddened. "This is family business." "I demand you tell me if my daughter is here." You can demand all you like, Mrs. Carson said. My answer remains the same. Wade approached, drawing the attention of both Mrs. Carson and the stranger. Is there a problem here? The man turned to assess Wade, his expression dismissive. This is a private matter, young man. It does not concern you. Anything involving Marlena Voss concerns me, Wade said, his voice level but hard. I am Wade Lancaster. Marlena is my intended. It was an exaggeration, maybe, since they were not formally engaged yet, but Wade wanted this man to know that Marlena was not without protection here. The man's eyes narrowed. Your intended. How convenient that she has found herself a suitor so quickly after running away. Tell me, young man, did she mention that she is promised to another man, that she is breaking a formal agreement by her absence? I know that her father tried to force her into a marriage she did not want, Wade said, his temper starting to rise. And I know she left to escape that. Whatever agreement you think exists, Marlena did not consent to it. She does not need to consent, the man said coldly. She is my daughter. It is my right and responsibility to arrange her future. It is her right to choose her own future, Wade countered. She is a grown woman, not property. You know nothing about this situation, the man snapped. Marlena has always been headstrong and foolish. She needs guidance, structure, a firm hand. What she needs is freedom and respect, Wade said, his hands clenching into fists. Things you apparently never gave her. Wade, Mrs. Carson said quietly. Perhaps we should discuss this inside. But before anyone could move, the boarding house door opened again and Marlena appeared. She froze when she saw her father, all color draining from her face. Marlena, her father said, and there was satisfaction in his tone. There you are. Stop this foolishness. Get your things. We are leaving. No, Marlena said, and her voice shook, but she held her ground. I am not going with you. Do not be ridiculous, her father said, stepping toward her. You have embarrassed me enough with this stunt. It is time to come home and fulfill your obligations. I have no obligations to you, Marlena said, her voice growing stronger. Not anymore. I made my choice, father. I am staying here. You made a foolish, impulsive decision, her father said. You cannot possibly support yourself. What do you think you are doing, working as a servant in a boarding house? You are better than this. I am exactly where I want to be, Marlena said. Doing work I find meaningful in a place where people respect me, where I get to make my own choices. Choices, her father scoffed. You are 22 years old, Marlena. You do not know what you want. I know I do not want to marry Mr. Beaumont, Marlena said, naming the man her father had chosen for her. I know I do not want to live the life you planned for me. I want to be here. I want to build my own future. Her father's expression hardened. And I suppose this future includes this cowboy. He said the word like an insult, glancing dismissively at Wade. Yes, Marlena said, moving to stand beside Wade. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. Wade is part of my future, by my choice. Wade squeezed her hand, feeling fierce pride at her courage even as he worried about the consequences. Then you are an even bigger fool than I thought, her father said coldly. You think this man can give you the life you deserve. You will be living in poverty, working yourself to the bone on some dusty ranch in the middle of nowhere. Is that really what you want? If it is with Wade, yes, Marlena said simply. I would rather have a hard life of my own choosing than a comfortable cage. You are making a mistake, her father said, but I can see you are determined to ruin yourself. Fine. When you come crawling back, do not expect me to welcome you. I will not be coming back, Marlena said. Goodbye, father. For a moment, something flickered across the man's face. Hurt, maybe, or regret, but it was gone quickly, replaced by cold anger. You are no longer my daughter, he said. I will tell everyone you died. It will be easier than explaining what you have become. The words hit like physical blows. Wade felt Marlena flinch beside him, felt her hand tighten painfully on his, but she held her head high. "If that is what you need to do, then do it," she said, her voice breaking only slightly. "But you do not get to control me anymore." Her father stared at her for a long moment, then turned on his heel and strode away, down the street toward the hotel where he must be staying. They watched until he was out of sight, the silence heavy. Then Marlena's legs gave out. Wade caught her, lowering her gently to sit on the porch steps. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "I did it," she whispered. "I really did it. I told him no, I chose myself." "You did," Wade said, holding her close. "I am so proud of you." Mrs. Carson sat down on Marlena's other side, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You were very brave, dear, and you are safe here. We will make sure of that." "He said I was dead to him," Marlena said, her voice broken. "My own father." "Then he is a fool," Mrs. Carson said firmly, "and you are well rid of him if that is how he chooses to love." Marlena cried for a while, and Wade just held her, murmuring comfort, letting her process everything that had just happened. When the tears finally subsided, she pulled back, wiping her face. "I am sorry," she said. "You should not have had to deal with that." "Do not apologize," Wade said. "I am glad I was here. I would face down 100 angry fathers for you." She managed a small smile. "Hopefully you will not have to." "Is he likely to cause more trouble?" Mrs. Carson asked practically. "Should we be concerned?" "I do not think so," Marlena said slowly. "He is too proud. If he has decided I am dead to him, he will not come back. That would mean admitting he could not control me, and his pride would not allow that." "Still, we will keep an eye out," Wade said, "just to be sure." They helped Marlena inside, and Wade stayed for another hour, making sure she was truly all right. By the time he left, she was calmer, the color returning to her face. But the confrontation had shaken something loose, Wade could tell, made the future more real, more urgent. Over the next few weeks, Marlena's father did indeed leave town, and as far as anyone could tell, he did not return. But the encounter had changed things between Wade and Marlena. There was a new intensity to their time together, a sense of preciousness, as if they both understood how fragile happiness could be. Marlena threw herself into the garden at Wade's ranch with renewed energy. Every Wednesday and Sunday afternoon she was there, turning soil, planting seeds, coaxing life from the earth. Wade helped when he could, but mostly he just watched her work, marveling at her determination and skill. Pete, who had observed all of this with his usual quiet wisdom, finally pulled Wade aside one October afternoon as the first hints of autumn began to cool the air. "You need to marry that girl," Pete said without preamble. "I know," Wade said. "I am going to. I just want to make sure the timing is right." "Son, the timing is never going to be perfect," Pete said. "Life does not work that way, but she has faced down her demons. She has chosen you in this life. What are you waiting for?" Wade thought about that. Pete was right as usual. He had been hesitating, wanting everything to be perfect, but perfection was not the point. Love was the point. Commitment was the point. Building a life together was the point. "You are right," Wade said. "I have been waiting for the perfect moment, but the perfect moment is now." "Any moment with her is perfect," Pete smiled. "Now you are talking sense. So what are you going to do about it?" Wade thought for a moment, then grinned. "I am going to ask her to marry me." "When?" Pete asked. "Sunday," Wade decided. "After church. I will take her to the creek and I will ask her properly." "You have got a ring?" Pete asked practically. Wade hesitated. "No, I did not think to get one yet." Pete disappeared into the barn and returned a few minutes later with a small box. "This was my mother's. Been meaning to pass it on to someone who would appreciate it. I think your Marlena would." Wade opened the box to find a simple gold band with a small, clear stone. It was elegant in its simplicity, and Wade knew immediately that Marlena would love it. "Pete, I cannot take this." "Sure you can," Pete said. "What am I going to do with it? Besides, it should be worn by someone who understands what it represents. A promise, freely given and freely received. Your girl understands that." Wade felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you. This means more than I can say." "Just make sure you treat her right," Pete said gruffly. "And give me some warning before you actually do it so I can make myself scarce." Wade laughed, pocketing the ring box carefully. "I will do my best." The rest of the week passed in a blur of nervous energy. Wade found himself rehearsing what he would say, then abandoning the words because they never felt right. How could he possibly articulate what Marlena meant to him? How she had changed everything. How she made him believe in futures he had thought were not for him. Finally, Sunday arrived. Wade dressed carefully, the ring box a constant weight in his vest pocket. He rode into town, his heart hammering, and met Marlena at the church as usual. "You seem nervous," Marlena observed as they sat through the service. "Are you all right?" "I am fine," Wade said, which was both true and a lie. He was fine. He was also terrified and excited, and so full of love he thought he might burst from it. After the service, they walked toward the creek as had become their habit. The October day was beautiful, the heat of summer finally broken, the sky that particular brilliant blue that only came with autumn. Leaves were just beginning to turn, hints of gold among the green. Marlena chatted about her week, about the garden and how the plants were taking hold, about a new boarder at Mrs. Carson's, about her continued relief that her father had not returned. Wade listened, letting her words wash over him, loving the simple fact of her beside him. They reached their favorite spot by the creek, a place where the water burbled over smooth stones and the cottonwood trees provided dappled shade. Wade had been planning to wait, to find the perfect moment in their walk to ask, but suddenly he could not wait another second. "Marlena," he said, taking both her hands and turning her to face him, "I need to tell you something." She looked up at him, something in his tone making her serious. "All right." Wade took a deep breath. "I am not good with fancy words. I am just a rancher, and I spend more time talking to cattle than people most days. But I need you to know what you mean to me." "Wade," she said softly, but he shook his head. "Let me finish, please. You came into my life like a miracle. I saved you from a rattlesnake, but the truth is, you saved me from something much worse. You saved me from a life half-lived, from loneliness I had convinced myself I was fine with. You made me believe in love again, in futures, in building something that matters." Tears were forming in Marlena's eyes, but she was smiling. "You are the strongest, bravest, most beautiful woman I have ever known," Wade continued. "You faced down your father and chose your own path. You work harder than anyone I have met. You make me want to be better, do better, build a life worthy of you. And I know we said we would take things slowly at your pace, but Marlena, I cannot wait any longer to ask you this." He dropped to one knee, pulling out the ring box and opening it. Marlena gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Marlena Voss, will you marry me?" Wade asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Will you be my wife, my partner, the mother of my children if we are blessed with them? Will you build a life with me, tend that garden, fill that house with love and laughter? Will you take a chance on a cowboy who loves you more than he thought it was possible to love anyone?" Marlena was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face, but she was nodding. "Yes," she said, her voice choked. "Yes, Wade, yes. 1,000 times yes." Wade surged to his feet, pulling her into his arms and kissing her deeply. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt, holding him close like she would never let go. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for breath, Wade took the ring from the box and slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "It is beautiful," Marlena whispered, holding her hand up to catch the light. "Wade, this is too much." "It was Pete's mother's," Wade explained. "He wanted you to have it, said it should be worn by someone who understands what it represents." "A promise," Marlena said softly, "freely given." "And freely received," Wade finished. "I love you, Marlena, more than I can ever say." "I love you too," Marlena said, looking up at him with those eyes that had captured him from the first moment, the eyes that held danger of the sweetest kind. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "Me too," Wade admitted, "but I figure we can be scared together." She laughed through her tears. "Together. I like the sound of that." They spent the rest of the afternoon by the creek, making plans. A wedding in November, small and simple, just close friends and townspeople. Marlena would move out to the ranch after the wedding, and they would build their life there together. She would tend her garden and help with the ranch, and they would face whatever came as partners. As the sun lowered toward the horizon, they finally made their way back toward town, hand in hand, Marlena's ring catching the golden light. They stopped by the boarding house first to tell Mrs. Carson, who embraced them both with joy and maybe a few tears of her own. "I could not be happier for you both," she said warmly. "Marlena, you have been like a daughter to me these past months. I am glad to see you so happy." "Thank you for everything," Marlena said, hugging the older woman tightly, "for giving me a place when I needed one, for protecting me from my father, for being the family I needed." "You will always have a place here," Mrs. Carson said, "both of you." They spent the rest of the evening at the boarding house, sharing their news with the other boarders, all of whom offered congratulations. Word spread quickly, as it does in small towns, and soon it seemed like half of Marysville knew that Wade Lancaster and Marlena Voss were engaged. When Wade finally left that evening to ride home, his face hurt from smiling. He found Pete waiting up for him, sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee despite the late hour. "Well?" Pete asked as Wade dismounted. "She said yes," Wade said, unable to keep the grin off his face. Pete smiled, standing and extending his hand. "Congratulations, son. I am happy for you. For both of you." Wade shook his hand, then pulled the old man into a hug. "Thank you for everything, for the ring, for the advice, for sticking with me all these years." Pete patted his back awkwardly. "You are a good man, Wade. You deserve happiness." "So do you," Wade said, pulling back. Pete waved that off. "I've got my happiness right here. The ranch, the work, watching you build your life. That is enough for me." The next weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Marlena and Wade decided on a simple ceremony at the church with Reverend Thompson officiating. Mrs. Carson insisted on hosting a reception at the boarding house afterward. The women of the town, who had taken Marlena under their collective wing, helped her make a dress, a simple but beautiful creation of cream-colored fabric. Wade had the ranch house cleaned and prepared, making room for Marlena's things, making sure everything was ready for her arrival. He bought a new bed, wider than the narrow single he had been using, and proper curtains for the windows. Small touches to turn the house into a home. Pete watched all this with amusement. "You know she would be happy in a tent if it meant being with you," he observed as Wade fussed over furniture arrangement for the third time. "I want her to be comfortable," Wade protested. "I want her to love it here." "She already loves it here," Pete said. "Because you are here. Everything else is just details." He was right, of course, but Wade wanted those details to be perfect anyway. Finally, the wedding day arrived. It was a beautiful November morning, cool and clear, the sky that deep blue that only comes with autumn. Wade stood at the front of the small church. Pete beside him as his witness, watching as the church filled with townspeople who had come to see them married. Then the door at the back of the church opened, and Marlena appeared, and everything else faded away. She walked down the aisle alone, having no father to give her away, but she did not need one. She was giving herself, freely and wholly, and that was as it should be. She was beautiful in her cream dress, her hair pulled back simply, a small bouquet of late-blooming wildflowers in her hands. But it was her face that stopped Wade's breath. She was radiant, glowing with happiness, her eyes locked on his as she walked toward him. When she reached him, Wade took her hand, and Reverend Thompson began the ceremony. Wade barely heard the words. He was too focused on Marlena, on the feel of her hand in his, on the wonder that she was about to become his wife. "Do you, Wade Lancaster, take Marlena Voss to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Reverend Thompson asked. "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Wade said, his voice strong and sure. "And do you, Marlena Voss, take Wade Lancaster to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Marlena said, tears shining in her eyes but her voice steady. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Wade, you may kiss your bride." Wade did not need to be told twice. He cupped Marlena's face gently and kissed her, sweet and full of promise. The small congregation erupted in applause, but Wade barely heard it. All he knew was Marlena, his wife, kissing him back with equal joy. They walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, and out into the bright autumn morning. A wagon was waiting to take them to the boarding house for the reception, and they climbed aboard, waving to the well-wishers who had gathered outside the church. The reception was everything it should be. Simple food, plenty of it, and joy and laughter filling every corner. People came up to offer congratulations, to share stories, to welcome Marlena officially into the community. Wade watched his new wife bloom under the attention, watched her laugh and talk and belong in a way that filled his heart to bursting. As the afternoon wore on toward evening, Wade and Marlena finally made their excuses and left, climbing into the wagon for the ride out to the ranch. Their ranch. Their home. The sun was setting as they arrived, painting the sky in brilliant reds and oranges. Wade helped Marlena down from the wagon, then surprised her by sweeping her up into his arms. "What are you doing?" she laughed. "Carrying you over the threshold," Wade said, striding toward the house. "It is tradition." "Who knew you were such a traditionalist?" Marlena teased, but she wrapped her arms around his neck, holding tight. Wade carried her into the house, into the home they would build together, and set her down gently in the main room. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the weight and wonder of the day settling over them. "Hello, husband," Marlena said softly. "Hello, wife," Wade replied, loving how the word sounded. That night, they became husband and wife in truth, coming together with tenderness and passion, learning each other in new ways, building the foundation of their married life. Afterward, they lay tangled together in their new bed, the moonlight streaming through the window, and talked about everything and nothing. "Are you happy?" Wade asked, his fingers tracing idle patterns on Marlena's shoulder. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Marlena said, looking up at him. "When I left Louisiana, I was just looking for safety, for freedom. I never imagined I would find this, find you, find love." "I love you so much," Wade said, kissing her forehead. "I will spend every day of our lives trying to make you happy." "You already make me happy," Marlena said. "Just by being you, by loving me the way you do." They fell asleep eventually, wrapped in each other's arms, and Wade's last thought before sleep claimed him was that he was the luckiest man alive. The first months of marriage were an adjustment, but a joyful one. Marlena took to ranch life with the same determination she brought to everything else. She learned the rhythms of the work, helped where she could, and transformed the ranch house into a real home. Her garden flourished under her care, and by spring, they were eating vegetables she had grown, fresh and delicious. Pete, who had been worried about becoming a third wheel, found himself instead gaining a daughter. Marlena fussed over him, made sure he ate properly, and listened to his stories with genuine interest. The old ranch hand bloomed under her attention, becoming more talkative and cheerful than Wade could remember seeing him. Wade himself felt like he was living in a dream. To wake up every morning to Marlena beside him, to share his days with her, to plan their future together, it was everything he had never known he wanted. They worked together, laughed together, faced the challenges of ranch life together. In late summer of their first year of marriage, Marlena came to Wade with news that made his heart soar. She was pregnant. They were going to have a baby. Wade picked her up and spun her around despite her laughing protests, then set her down and kissed her thoroughly. "We are going to be parents," he said, wonder in his voice. "We are," Marlena confirmed, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Are you happy?" "I am terrified and elated and more in love with you than ever," Wade said honestly. "But yes, I am happy. So happy." Pete was equally thrilled at the news, immediately beginning to build a cradle in his spare time. Mrs. Carson and the other women in town rallied around Marlena, offering advice and support and hand-sewn baby clothes. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, Marlena blooming with health despite the occasional discomfort. Wade fussed over her constantly, earning exasperated but fond looks from both Marlena and Pete. He could not help it. The idea of Marlena carrying their child filled him with protective instincts he could barely control. In early spring, on a warm April morning, Marlena went into labor. The town's midwife, Mrs. Fletcher, came out to the ranch, and Wade found himself relegated to pacing outside the bedroom door with Pete, listening to the sounds from within and trying not to panic. "She will be fine," Pete said for the 10th time. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "That does not make it any less terrifying," Wade said, running his hands through his hair. "What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing is going to go wrong," Pete said firmly. "Marlena is strong. She will get through this just fine." It felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few hours before the bedroom door finally opened and Mrs. Fletcher emerged, smiling. "Congratulations, Wade. You have got a healthy baby boy." Wade rushed into the room, his eyes immediately going to Marlena. She looked exhausted but radiant, cradling a small bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up at him and smiled, tears of joy on her face. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Wade approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blanket. His son. His and Marlena's son. The baby had a shock of dark hair and eyes that were trying to focus, and Wade felt his heart expand in a way he had not thought possible. "He is perfect," Wade whispered, his voice rough. "Marlena, he is perfect." "Do you want to hold him?" Marlena asked. Wade nodded, carefully taking the baby from her. The weight was so light, the bundle so small, and Wade felt terror and love in equal measure. "Hello, little one," he said softly. "I am your father, and I am going to do everything I can to give you a good life." The baby made a small sound, and Wade felt something settle in his chest. This was his family. Marlena and this new little person. This was everything. "What should we name him?" Marlena asked, watching husband and son with soft eyes. They had discussed names but had not settled on anything. Wade looked down at his son, then at his wife. What about William? We could call him Will, Marlena smiled. William Lancaster, I like it. Welcome to the world, Will. Pete was allowed in shortly after, and the old ranch hand's weathered face creased into the biggest smile Wade had ever seen when he was allowed to hold the baby. He is a fine boy, Pete said gruffly. Going to grow up to be a fine man, I can tell. The next months were a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Wade discovered that he loved being a father, loved watching Will grow and change, loved the way Marlena glowed with motherhood. They were tired all the time, covered in spit-up more often than not, but they were happy. Will grew from a tiny baby into a chubby, happy infant, then into a toddler who got into everything. He had Wade's dark hair and Marlena's brown eyes, and a smile that could light up a room. He adored his parents and Grandpa Pete, as he called the old ranch hand, following them around as soon as he could walk, trying to help with everything. When Will was 2, Marlena discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she gave birth to a daughter they named Emma, a tiny, perfect little girl with Marlena's features and Wade's stubborn chin. Will was fascinated by his baby sister, insisting on helping with everything, much to his parents' amusement. The years flowed by, marked by the seasons of ranch life and the growth of their family. Wade and Marlena added 2 more children to their brood, another boy named James and a second daughter named Sarah. The ranch house rang with laughter and the chaos of 4 children, and Wade could not imagine his life any other way. Pete, growing older but still spry, became the beloved grandfather figure to all the children. He taught them to ride, to rope, to respect the land and the animals. He told them stories of the old days, of their father as a young man, of their grandmother's garden that their mother had restored. Marlena's garden continued to flourish, expanding every year until it was a source of pride for the whole family. She taught her daughters and sons alike how to tend it, how to coax life from the soil, how to find peace in the work of growing things. The ranch prospered under Wade's careful management. He expanded the herd, built a reputation for quality cattle, became a respected voice in the ranching community. But his greatest pride was always his family, the life he and Marlena had built together. On a summer evening when Wade was 40, he sat on the porch with Marlena, watching their children play in the yard. Will was 15 now, nearly a man, helping run the ranch. Emma was 13, all legs and energy and questions. James was 10, quiet and thoughtful like his father. Sarah, their baby, was 8, fearless and determined like her mother. "Can you believe this is our life?" Marlena asked, leaning against Wade's shoulder. "Sometimes I still cannot quite grasp it." "What do you mean?" Wade asked, putting his arm around her. "Just that I never imagined I could be this happy," Marlena said. "When I left Louisiana, I was just looking for safety, a place where I could breathe. I never dreamed I would find love, a home, a family like this." Wade pressed a kiss to her temple. "I knew from the moment I saw you that you were dangerous." Marlena laughed. "Dangerous? I almost got bitten by a rattlesnake." "Not that kind of dangerous," Wade said. "Dangerous to my heart, to my carefully constructed life of loneliness. I took one look at your eyes and I knew you were going to change everything, and you did." "You saved my life that day," Marlena said softly, "in more ways than one." "We saved each other," Wade corrected. "You saved me just as much as I saved you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children, listening to their laughter. Pete emerged from the barn and headed over to settle on the porch steps, his old bones grateful for the rest. "Fine evening," Pete observed. "It is," Wade agreed. "You two did good," Pete said, gesturing to the children. "Built something real, something lasting." "We did," Marlena said warmly. And we could not have done it without you, Pete. You are family. You have always been family. Pete cleared his throat, emotion making his voice gruff. Cannot think of anywhere else I would rather be. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Wade thought about the journey that had brought them all here. A rattlesnake on a dusty road. A woman with dangerous eyes and a brave heart. A love that grew from a moment of terror into something lasting and true. He thought about Marlena's father, who had tried to control her, to force her into a life she did not want. Wade wondered sometimes if the man regretted his choices, if he thought about the daughter he had disowned, the grandchildren he would never know. But mostly, Wade just felt grateful. Grateful that Marlena had been brave enough to leave to choose herself, to build the life she wanted. "What are you thinking about?" Marlena asked, reading his expression. "Just how lucky I am," Wade said honestly. "How grateful I am for every twist and turn that brought you to me." "Even the rattlesnake," Marlena teased. "Especially the rattlesnake," Wade said, making her laugh. "Without that snake, I might have just ridden past, might never have stopped to talk to you, might have missed this whole beautiful life." "Then I suppose I should be grateful to that snake too," Marlena said, in a strange way. Will called from the yard, something about the horses, and Wade stood to go help him. But he paused, leaning down to kiss Marlena thoroughly. "What was that for?" she asked when he pulled back, her eyes sparkling. "For being you, for choosing me, for this life we built, for everything." "I love you, Wade Lancaster," Marlena said. "I love you too, Marlena Lancaster," Wade replied. "Today and always." He headed down to help Will with whatever the problem was, and Marlena stayed on the porch with Pete, the two of them watching the sunset paint the world in gold. The children's laughter filled the air, the ranch hummed with the peaceful sounds of evening, and everything was exactly as it should be. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Will grew into a fine young man and eventually took a wife of his own, a smart, capable woman named Hannah who fit into the family perfectly. They built a small house on the ranch property and began their own family, making Wade and Marlena grandparents. Emma showed an unexpected talent for medicine and went off to study nursing, eventually returning to Marysville to help the town's elderly doctor with his practice. James took to ranching like he was born to it, working alongside Wade and Pete to keep the operation running smoothly. Sarah, their youngest, had her mother's way with growing things and turned a portion of the property into a commercial garden, selling produce to the surrounding towns. Pete lived to see all of this, to witness the family he had helped raise thriving and happy. When he finally passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, Wade and Marlena mourned him deeply, but also celebrated the long, full life he had lived. They buried him on the ranch in a spot overlooking the pastures he had loved, under a cottonwood tree that provided shade and peace. "He was family," Wade said at the simple service, his voice thick with emotion. "He stuck with me through the worst times of my life. He gave his blessing to the best thing that ever happened to me, and he loved our children like they were his own grandchildren. We will miss him every day, but we will honor his memory by continuing to build the life he helped us create." As Wade and Marlena grew older themselves, they took increasing joy in watching their family expand. More grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch with energy and laughter. Wade taught them to ride just as Pete had taught him and his children. Marlena showed them her garden, passing on the knowledge her grandmother had given her. On the evening of their 25th wedding anniversary, Wade and Marlena sat on their porch, gray now in their hair, lines on their faces earned through years of laughter and hard work and good living. Their children had thrown them a party in town, half of Marysville showing up to celebrate the couple who had become such an integral part of the community. Now, in the quiet after the celebration, they sat together watching the sunset just as they had countless times before. 25 years, Marlena mused. How is that even possible? Because time goes faster when you are happy, Wade said. Or so they tell me. Any regrets? Marlena asked. Wade thought about it seriously, wanting to give her an honest answer. Not a single one. Every choice I have made since the day I saw you on that road has been the right one. No regrets, Marlena said firmly. Leaving Louisiana was the hardest thing I ever did, but it brought me here, to you, to this life. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Do you ever think about your father? Wade asked. It was a question he rarely posed, knowing the subject was painful, but tonight felt right for honesty. Sometimes, Marlena admitted. I wonder if he really told everyone I died, if he ever regretted his choices. But mostly I just feel sad for what he missed. He could have known his grandchildren, could have been part of this beautiful family, but his pride would not allow it. His loss, Wade said firmly. We are better off without anyone who cannot accept us as we are. I know, Marlena said. And I made my peace with it long ago. The family I chose, the one we built together, that is more real than any blood tie. They sat in silence for a while, holding hands, watching the last light fade from the sky. Around them, the ranch hummed with evening sounds. In the distance, they could hear their grandchildren playing, Will and Hannah's children, full of energy even as the day wound down. You know what I think about sometimes, Wade said after a while. What? Marlena asked. That rattlesnake, Wade said, making her laugh. I think about how many things had to align perfectly for us to meet. If I had left for town 5 minutes earlier or later, if you had chosen a different route, if that snake had not been exactly where it was. Fate, Marlena said. My grandmother believed in it. She used to say that the right things find us at the right time. She was a wise woman, Wade said. She would have loved you, Marlena said softly. She would have loved all of this. The ranch, the children, the garden, this life we built. I wish I could have met her, Wade said. To thank her for teaching you about gardens, for raising you to be the woman you are. She knew, Marlena said. Somehow, I think she knew I would be all right, that I would find my way to happiness. Emma emerged from the house, carrying a tray with coffee and cake left over from the party. Thought you two might want a snack, she said, settling onto the porch steps. It is your anniversary after all. Thank you, sweetheart, Marlena said, accepting a plate. Emma looked at her parents, affection clear on her face. You know, you two are relationship goals for all of us. The way you still look at each other after 25 years, the way you work together, support each other, still make each other laugh, that is what we all want. The secret, Wade said, is finding the right person. Someone who challenges you to be better, who stands beside you through hard times, who makes the good times sweeter. Your mother is all of that and more. Oh, stop, Marlena said, blushing. You will make me cry. It is true, Wade insisted. Every word. Emma smiled. Well, Hannah and I have been talking, and we think you need a vacation. A real one. The ranch is running smoothly, all of us kids are grown and settled. Why do not you two take a trip? Go somewhere you have always wanted to see. Wade and Marlena looked at each other, considering. They had never really left Marysvale except for necessary trips to larger towns for supplies. There had always been too much to do, too many responsibilities. Where would we even go? Marlena asked. California, Wade said immediately. You have always wanted to see the ocean. Marlena's eyes widened. Really? You would do that? Why not? Wade said. Emma is right. The ranch is in good hands. We have earned a trip. Let's go see the ocean. They made plans over the next weeks, a journey that would take them by train to San Francisco and the California coast. It felt like an adventure, something new after years of routine. Their children were thrilled for them, helping them prepare, making sure every detail was arranged. The trip itself was everything they hoped. The train ride was long but fascinating, watching the landscape change from the Texas plains to mountains to the green valleys of California. San Francisco was overwhelming and exciting, so different from Marysville that it felt like a different world. But the best part was the ocean. Wade and Marlena stood on the beach, holding hands, watching the waves crash against the shore. Marlena had tears in her eyes, overwhelmed by the beauty and power of it. "It is even more magnificent than I imagined," she breathed. "It is," Wade agreed, though he was watching her face more than the water. Even after 25 years, the sight of her joy still moved him. They spent a week in California, exploring, seeing new things, but mostly just enjoying time together without the demands of the ranch. It reminded them of their early days of courtship, those walks by the creek, those conversations that built the foundation of their relationship. On their last evening in California, they walked on the beach at sunset, the sand cool beneath their feet, the sound of the waves a constant backdrop. "Thank you for this," Marlena said, "for bringing me here, for every adventure big and small over the years." "Thank you for saying yes when I asked you to marry me," Wade replied, "for choosing me, for building this life with me, for making every day better than the last." "Always so romantic," Marlena teased, but her eyes were soft. "Only with you," Wade said. "Only ever with you." They returned to Texas, to the ranch, to their family, refreshed and happy. The years continued their march, each one bringing changes. Wade's hair went fully gray, then white. Marlena's hands showed the effects of years of garden work, but they were still strong, still capable. They grew older together, their love deepening with time rather than fading. More grandchildren arrived, and then great-grandchildren, the family tree spreading and flourishing. The ranch continued to prosper under the combined efforts of Wade, James, and Will, becoming one of the most respected operations in the county. On a spring morning when Wade was 65, he woke to find Marlena already up, standing at the bedroom window looking out at her garden. The early morning light made her hair, now silver gray, seem to glow. She was still beautiful to him, still the woman who had stolen his heart all those years ago on a dusty Texas road. "What are you looking at?" he asked, climbing out of bed to join her. "Just thinking," Marlena said, leaning back against him as he wrapped his arms around her. "About how far we have come, how much we have built." "We have built a good life," Wade agreed. "The best life," Marlena corrected. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." They stood there together, watching the sun rise over the ranch, over the garden, over the land they had poured their lives into. They could hear the ranch coming to life around them, James already up and working, grandchildren arriving for their regular visits, the comforting sounds of family and home. "I love you," Wade said, the words as true and necessary as breathing. "I love you too," Marlena replied. From that first day to this one, and all the days to come, they continued to grow old together, their love a constant in a changing world. They celebrated 50 years of marriage with all their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren gathered around them. They told the story of how they met, the rattlesnake, the dangerous eyes, the love that grew from that moment of fate. Eventually, as is the way of all things, they began to slow down. Wade's joints ached on cold mornings. Marlena's eyesight faded, though she still tended her garden with the help of her grandchildren. They spent more time on the porch, watching life unfold around them, content in the knowledge that they had built something lasting. On a cool autumn evening when Wade was 73 and Marlena 72, they sat together on the porch as the sun set. The ranch was quiet, the day's work done. James was running things now, capably and confidently, continuing what Wade had built. You remember the first time we sat here?" Marlena asked. "After you proposed." "I remember every moment I have ever spent with you," Wade said truthfully. "But yes, I remember that night especially. I was so scared you would change your mind, that you would realize you could do better than a lonely rancher." "I never could have done better," Marlena said firmly. "You were and are everything I needed. Everything I wanted even before I knew I wanted it." "We made a good life," Wade said, looking out at the ranch, at the garden, at the evidence of their years together. "We did," Marlena agreed. "A very good life." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear overhead, the same stars that had watched over them for so many years. Wade reached for Marlena's hand, their fingers lacing together automatically, effortlessly, the gesture as natural as breathing after all these years. "I would do it all again," Wade said. "Every moment, every choice, every challenge. If it meant ending up here with you, I would do it all exactly the same." Marlena squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes but a smile on her face. "So would I, every single moment." Around them, the ranch settled into evening, their family safe and happy, their legacy secure. The dangerous eyes that had captivated Wade so long ago still held the same power, the same ability to make him feel like the luckiest man alive. And as the night embraced them, Wade and Marlena Lancaster sat together, hand in hand, their love story complete and perfect, a testament to the power of choosing your own path and the courage to follow your heart.